Okay, let's just dive right in. We are not just looking at a historical document today. We're stepping into uh, a really profound philosophical conflict.
Right. And it all takes place inside a state psychopathic institution back in the winter of 1900.
And it all hinges on one single, completely baffling patient. A man brought in for a truly brutal murder.
But the doctor on the case, a medical intern, he didn't see a criminal. He didn't even see a madman. Not really.
No. He saw a cosmic mystery. He saw some kind of non-human identity trapped inside a human body.
It's an incredible premise.
It is. And it forces you to ask a question that really just shakes the foundation of everything we think we know about being human.
Do our dreams, are they glimpses into a totally separate existence? An existence away from our physical waking life?
That's the question. So our mission today, for you listening and for us, is to really get into the weeds of this intern's testimony. It's incredibly detailed, almost like a journalist's account.
And for this deep dive, we have to accept his account as completely factual. We're treating it as a window into a reality where consciousness isn't tied to biology or time.
Right. And to do that, we have to start where he started, with his philosophy. Because before this patient, Joe Slater, even walked through the door, this doctor was already prepared to believe.
He was. He had this radical conviction that just completely rejected the psychology of his day.
Absolutely. It's the only way to make sense of what happens next. He flat out says he finds the idea that dreams are just faint and fantastic reflections of our waking experiences. He finds that completely untenable.
Which, in the early 1900s, was a massive statement. He specifically dismisses any theory that relies on, and this is a great phrase, puerile symbolism.
That is a direct shot at Freud.
Oh, absolutely. Freud's work was just starting to get traction, and this intern is basically saying, that's child's play.
Yeah.
He's saying, my patients aren't dreaming of symbols, they're literally traveling through galaxies.
He believes that when we're lost to terrestrial consciousness, what we call deep sleep, our true self is off sojourning in what he calls an uncorporeal life.
And he even suggests that this other life, this might be our truer life.
Which means our waking reality, everything we're doing right now, might just be secondary or merely virtual.
It completely flips the script. Sleeping isn't just a biological reset, it's a profound event. And from the bits and pieces that leak through into our memory, he draws these 4 staggering conclusions about that other life.
And these conclusions, they just break the rules of our reality.
Completely.
So let's look at them. First, in this uncorporeal world, life, matter, vitality, they aren't constant, they're fluid, changeable.
Right. And if matter isn't a constant, then the whole idea of a solid physical universe just kind of goes out the window.
And second, he says that time and space, at least as we understand them, they just don't exist there.
And that one is maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. Because if time doesn't exist, then the entity inside Joe Slater, it wouldn't experience a 42-year human life as decades of imprisonment.
It would be like a blink, a jarring, brief, and probably horrifying flicker in its real eternal consciousness.
It totally changes the stakes. The human body isn't just a home, it's a prison. And the motivation to escape would be overwhelming.
You're not escaping jail, you're escaping a biological sentence that feels like an eternity here, but is just a moment somewhere else.
Exactly. And that framework gives us the context we need. We're about to meet the physical vessel for this entity, a vessel named Joe Slater.
So the vessel arrives in the winter of 1900, right after our intern has been thinking about all this, and he comes in the custody of 4 state policemen.
Yeah, the subject known as Joe Slater, or sometimes Slater.
This man, Joe Slater, he represents just the absolute bottom of the barrel, physically and intellectually. The sources are so specific about those.
They describe him as a scion of a primitive colonial peasant stock from a super isolated part of the Catskill Mountains.
And this wasn't just, living out in the country. The records say this community was cut off for nearly 300 years.
Which led to what the text calls a kind of barbaric degeneracy.
The intern doesn't pull any punches. He says it's a place where law and morals are non-existent, that their general mental state was lower than any other group of native-born Americans.
So right away you have this massive contradiction. You're supposed to believe that this brilliant, luminous, cosmic being was stuffed into the most degraded, limited human container imaginable.
Why? That's the question. And when he shows up, the contrast is it's immediate. He's been brought in for this savage murder. He's considered a highly dangerous character.
And he shows up with an absurd appearance of harmless cupidity. He looks like a complete dullard.
Not a cosmic force of vengeance.
No. Physically, he's brawny, so there's strength there, but his face is all listlessness. Pale, sleepy blue eyes, a messy yellow beard, and that listless, drooping nether lip.
That detail really paints a picture of just bovine emptiness.
And they don't even know how old he is. They guess around 40, based on his baldness and rotten teeth, but there are no records, no family ties. He's functionally anonymous. A total blank slate.
So that raises a key question for the intern's whole theory. Why this body? Was it random, or was this kind of degenerate human somehow more permeable, easier for an entity to slip in and out of?
That's a great point. Maybe the planet shell, as he calls it, was just poorly insulated. And Slater's history seems to back that up.
His neighbors always thought he was strange. He slept way more than a normal person.
Which, in this new context, means his true self needed more time in that uncorporeal life.
And when he did wake up, he'd immediately start talking about these unknown things. But here's the tragedy of it.
The language barrier.
Exactly. He's trying to describe these huge transcendental visions using the debased patois of his environment, a tiny vocabulary from a crude dialect.
It was so bizarre it scared people. But the real kicker, the thing that supports the intern's theory, is that Slater himself was just as terrified and baffled as everyone else.
And then, within an hour, poof, he'd forget everything. He'd go back to that bovine, half-amiable normality.
It's like Joe Slater, the man, was just a terrified spectator watching a movie being played through his own eyes.
The host body was afraid of its passenger. But that separation, that wall between them, started to break down about a month before he got to the institution.
The entity's manifestations got more frequent and more violent.
Which leads directly to the murder. It happened around noon. Slater had been sleeping really deeply after a whiskey binge.
And he didn't just wake up. He exploded. He let out these ululations so horrible and unearthly that his neighbors came running.
He runs out into the snow, but he's not just running away. He's leaping high into the air, shouting about reaching a big, big cabin with brightness in the roof and walls and floor and the loud, queer music far away.
That's it. That's the first real description of his destination, the place of light. He's literally trying to jump into another dimension.
But two men grab him, and that's when the entity's full power comes out. He fights with this maniacal force and fury, screaming that he needs to find and kill a thing that shines and shakes and laughs.
The focus shifts. It goes from escape to homicidal rage.
And he screams that he'll jump high in the air and burn his way through anything that stopped him. He's not thinking in human terms. He's talking about cosmic warfare.
And the result, well, it confirms that non-human level of violence. He leaves behind an unrecognizable pulp-like thing where his neighbor, Peter Slater, used to be.
The brutality is just off the charts.
Yep.
It suggests the entity, trapped in a physical body, could only express its cosmic rage with the savage animal tools it had on hand.
That's the core contradiction, isn't it? The superior motive, cosmic revenge, had to be carried out by this inferior, degenerate body.
The body was a blunt instrument, and after the violence, the connection is immediately severed.
They find him unconscious in a hollow tree, and the waking man is back. He tells the alienists a simple story. He drank, he woke up with blood on his hands next to a dead body, and he ran. Complete amnesia.
And for the intern, that blank slate is the final proof. Joe Slater didn't do it. The passenger did. The host brain didn't even have the capacity to record what happened. But the other doctors, they didn't have the intern's philosophy. To them, he was just a very strange murderer. But even before the next big episode, the intern noticed something. A flicker.
Yeah, Dr. Barnard noted a certain gleam of peculiar quality in Slater's eyes, and an all but imperceptible tightening of his lips. It suggested an intelligent determination that just wasn't Joe Slater.
And that flicker quickly became a fire, the first major mental attack in the jail.
It took 4 men to get him into a straitjacket. And this time, the entity gives its most detailed description of its world yet.
For 15 minutes, he just raves. But listen to the content. Great edifices of light, oceans of space, shadowy mountains and valleys. This isn't the Catskills he's describing.
No, this is the geography of the dream life. And the emotional core is still the same. Pure revenge. Revenge on that blazing entity that shook and laughed and mocked at him.
He says he's going to soar through abysses of emptiness, burning every obstacle. The certainty, the confidence in his power is just absolute.
And then, just like before, the switch flips. The frenzy just stops. The fire of madness dies from his eyes, and he just asks in dull wonder why he's tied up.
The entity is gone. The empty shell is back.
And this cycle was the problem for the other doctors.
Yeah.
How do you explain this gorgeous imagery coming from a guy who can't read or write, who's never been anywhere or seen anything?
Their consensus was simple, reductive, really. Abnormal dreams. So vivid they just overwhelmed the weak mind of this basically inferior man.
So he was acquitted on grounds of insanity,
Yeah.
sent to the institution, and for them, that was that. Case closed.
But for our narrator, this was just the beginning. He dove into the case with extreme eagerness. He felt this weird connection.
He was just floored by the contrast. The man was pitifully inferior in mentality and language, but the visions required a superior or even exceptional brain.
Right. A degenerate from the Catskills just doesn't dream up glittering realms of supernal radiance in space. It's impossible.
So the intern starts to build this profile of the cosmic self. He figures that in the dream world, Slater isn't a peasant. He's a creature of importance and vivid life, moving proudly and dominantly.
An active participant, flying through resplendent and prodigious valleys, meadows, gardens, cities, and palaces of light.
And his enemy is very clearly defined. Never a man, always a thing, a visible yet ethereal structure.
The intern also figures out something crucial about the conflict. The entity believes that it and its enemy are of the same race. The luminous thing, race. They're equals.
And that's what sustains the belief that it can really fly through space and burn through obstacles. It's a war between two star beings.
But this epic cosmic war is being filtered through the tiny, crackling speaker of Joe Slater's mind. The magnificent ideas are trapped by these rustic words.
And that leads the intern to his big question. Could there be a true dream world where you don't use oral language, where thought is transmitted directly?
Was this dream soul just desperately trying to say things that the simple and halting tongue of dullness could not utter?
The blockage was physical, so any normal therapy was useless. The intern needed a direct line, a neural bridge to that superior mind.
And amazingly, he already had the theoretical groundwork for it. He believed thought was atomic or molecular motion, that it could be converted into ether waves, like radio.
This is where you see this amazing mix of extreme metaphysics and very early, very fringe 20th century science. Remember, this is 1901.
Marconi is just starting to send signals across the ocean. The idea of the ether as this invisible medium that carries everything, including thoughts, was still being seriously debated.
So in college, the intern had built this crude wireless telegraphy setup. Not for Morse code, but for telepathy.
He digs out this old cumbrous apparatus and gets it working again. He's going to try and bypass Joe Slater's body entirely.
And he's doing this completely in secret. His colleagues had just warned him he was overworking, that he needed to rest.
He was risking his career, maybe even his sanity, for one last shot at proving his entire cosmic philosophy. He needed that final, undeniable revelation. And that brings us to the moment of truth. The night of February 21st, 1901.
The stage is set. Joe Slater is dying. It's clear. Maybe from missing his mountain home, or maybe the constant struggle inside his brain was just too much for his sluggish physique.
The flame was going out.
The intern decides not to use a straitjacket. Slater is too feeble. Instead, he sets up his cosmic radio. He places the endpoints on his own head and on Slater's.
It's an intimate, desperate, and totally forbidden act.
The only other person in the room is a single mediocre nurse, and the air is just thick with fatigue and the feeling of approaching death.
She falls asleep.
And then, a little later, the intern nods off too. It's just for a moment. Lulled by the breathing in the room.
Until he's woken up. But not by a sound in the room.
No. He's aroused by the sound of weird lyric melody. It's chords, vibrations, and harmonic ecstasies, echoing, not in the room, but inside his head.
The machine is working, the thought waves are coming through.
And he is immediately thrown into this stupendous spectacle of ultimate beauty. He's in a shared, non-physical reality.
He sees these palaces made of living fire under an infinitely high vaulted dome. This is it. This is the big, big cabin with brightness that Slater had been screaming about.
And the whole environment, the plains, the mountains, the valleys, everything is covered with this glowing, ethereal, plastic entity. The substance of this world partakes as much of spirit as it does of matter.
But here's the key insight, the moment of validation for him. He realizes the environment is subjective.
His own brain held the key. Whatever vista his mind wished to see appeared. The dream world was tailored to the consciousness observing it.
And even though he's never been there in his waking life, it feels totally familiar, like he's lived there for uncounted eons.
This is the proof. He, too, is an entity of light that travels in his sleep.
And then the connection is made. The resplendent aura of my brother of light comes near. There's no need for words. They communicate soul to soul with silent and perfect interchange of thought.
The communication blockage is gone, and the entity is triumphant.
It's his hour of approaching triumph because he is escaping at last from a degrading periodic bondage. 42 years in Joe Slater's body is almost over.
And his purpose is terrifyingly clear: to pursue the accursed oppressor.
This won't be a small skirmish. It will be a flaming cosmic vengeance which would shake the spheres. He's going to follow his enemy even unto the uttermost fields of ether.
And that phrase, degrading periodic bondage, is so important. It suggests this isn't a one-time thing, that maybe this entity is doomed to periodically possess these crude life forms on different worlds.
Which would make a human life just a brief, horrible layover in an eternal war.
And then the vision starts to fade. A forced recall to Earth. The entity tells him the planet shell, Slater's body, is well nigh spent. In less than an hour, it will be free to start the chase.
A chase that will go along the Milky Way and past the hither stars to the very confines of infinity.
The urgency must have been incredible. And then a well-defined shock snaps him back from that glorious scene of light to the small, dark, grimy cell.
Back in reality, the scene is just as incredible. Joe Slater is waking up for the very last time, and as the intern watches, his physical body actually starts to transform.
For a moment, it's reflecting the powerful, intelligent presence inside. His sallow cheeks get spots of color.
His slack, drooping lip becomes tightly compressed, suggesting a stronger character and a mind of high order.
And his eyes, once pale and sleepy, are now luminous, expanded, and a deeper shade of blue. This isn't Joe Slater anymore. This is the entity of light, physically manifesting.
The intern quickly readjusts the headbands. He needs to catch this last broadcast, and he gets it. The full, high-order thought message, translated instantly into English in his mind.
And it starts with a brutal, cold assessment of the body. Joe Slater is dead.
The entity basically says the host died because he was unfit to bear the active intellect of a cosmic entity. He was too much of an animal, too little a man.
It confirms it. The primitive body just couldn't handle the power of its passenger. But then the message turns to the narrator.
A massive, life-altering revelation. The entity confirms they are brothers of light, and that the narrator himself is a traveler who leaves his body in dreamless sleep.
The only reason they ever met was because of Slater's defective body. It allowed their two worlds, the cosmic and the planetary, to unnaturally intersect.
So our intern is one of them, a secret star traveler, temporarily bound to Earth.
But the scale of this other entity's existence is it's staggering. It calls itself a roamer of vast spaces and travelers in many ages.
I mean, we have to pause on this. It casually mentions its future lives. It says it'll be in ancient Egypt next year, or in the cruel empire of Sanchan 3,000 years from now.
What is Sanchan? We have no idea. Some future or alien empire so cruel it stands out in a life that spans eons.
And its past lives are just as strange. It mentions dwelling in the bodies of insect philosophers on Jupiter's fourth moon.
Just try to picture that, a whole civilization of intelligent, philosophical insects on Callisto or Europa. The 42 years as Joe Slater was just a blip between being an insect and visiting ancient Egypt.
Our human minds can't grasp that scope, and the entity knows it. It gives the doctor a stark warning.
It says, how little does the Earth self know of life and its extent? How little indeed ought it to know for its own tranquility?
Sanity requires ignorance. Our minds are too fragile to know the truth.
But the main point of the message was revenge. The entity finally, explicitly, identifies its oppressor.
And it's not just another entity out there somewhere. It's tied to something we can see, something we have a name for.
The entity says people on Earth have unwittingly felt its distant presence. You who, without knowing idly, gave to its blinking beacon the name of Algol, the demon star.
Wow, Algol, the demon star Beta Persei, a star that's been associated with evil and misfortune for centuries in human culture.
And the entity confirms our darkest superstitions about it are true. It declares it is going now as a nemesis bearing just and blazingly cataclysmic vengeance.
It's not just escaping, it's launching a cosmic war against a specific star.
And its last words are a command and a promise. Watch me in the sky close by the demon star. It says they'll meet again, maybe in Orion's sword or prehistoric Asia.
And then the thought waves just stop, the energy is gone.
And the body collapses. The intelligence vanishes. Slater's eyes glaze over fitfully. He is cold, stiff, and pulseless.
The transformation reverses instantly. The face becomes repulsive again. Sallow cheeks, thick lips falling open, showing the rotten fangs of the degenerate Joe Slater.
The intern just pulls a blanket over the hideous face, and he feels this insistent and unaccountable craving for a sleep whose dreams I should not remember. He needs the oblivion he was just warned against escaping.
So you're left with this unbelievable, detailed account of a cosmic being escaping its body to go fight a war with a star. If that's where the story ended, inside the walls of that institution, it's just a tragic delusion.
And that's exactly how it was treated. The narrator's superior, old Dr. Fenton, he dismissed the whole thing.
He was the voice of reason, of orthodoxy.
Right. He chalked it all up to the intern's nervous strain and said Slater was just a low-grade paranoiac whose ideas came from crude hereditary folktales.
It's the simple, clean medical explanation. Case closed.
But our narrator, he knows what he saw, what he felt, and he provides one last piece of evidence, a stunning piece of external scientific testimony that moves this whole thing from an internal belief to an observable physical fact.
This is the astronomical climax. He quotes the famous astronomer, Professor Garrett P. Serviss.
And the quote is about the discovery of a massive cosmic event, the appearance of Nova Persei on February 20th, 1901.
The day after Joe Slater died.
Let's just sit with the timing and the location. The entity said, "Watch me in the sky close by the demon star." The very next day, this new star, this nova, is discovered by an astronomer in Edinburgh.
And where does it appear?
Precisely, not very far from Algol, the demon star.
The coincidence is just. It's terrifyingly precise. Within 24 hours of this entity declaring war, a massive stellar explosion happens right next to its named enemy.
And the intensity was incredible. Within hours, the nova outshone Capella, which is one of the brightest stars in the sky, and then it faded quickly, consistent with a powerful, sudden, temporary event. A battle, maybe?
So you have the testimony of the dying entity, watch me. And then you have the impartial scientific record of an explosive new light appearing exactly there, exactly then.
Which leaves us with the final provocative thought. What does it mean for our physical universe when a dream soul, an entity of light, escapes 42 years of bondage and fulfills its promise of revenge? Was that blinding star just celestial mechanics? Or was it, as the intern believed, a battle of flaming cosmic vengeance that was visible from Earth for one brief, scientifically documented moment? And if it was a battle, who won?